Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I'm Mary Catherine Ham, your host. I'm here with my co-host, Vic Mattis of the Washington Free Beacon. We are your morning show for any hour. We got a lot going on. There's the rise of anti-Semitism in America that we're going to deal with. There's an upcoming debate. There was also the Newsom-DeSantis face-off last week that we want to talk about a little bit. So plenty going on in the news, including some Iowa stuff as well. But before we get into that, Vic, how's it going?
Hello, Mary Catherine. Doing great. Jury duty canceled, which does not mean I am anti-jury duty, because we all need to do our civic duty, as we say, and it matters because if you are in the court, you are at the mercy of these people. You're in their hands. But in the district, I've been called up multiple times, and I served twice. And anyway, in Arlington, the way it works is you call the night before, and even before I called, I got an email and a text saying, do not show up. Your service is complete. Okay. And I think it's really the upside of having a George Soros prosecutor. There's no trials. That's the best part about it. You know, they just let everybody free.
Just let them out.
Just let them out. No, I don't know the reason. I imagine that their docket is completely backed up. Maybe that's the reason, but nevertheless, I'm off for now. Might get called in a few more months, but other than that, in another 2 or 3 years, I think it's about three years, hopefully more. So don't have to worry about that this week or this holiday. But I do have some explosive news.
What's that?
So last night, I was doing some work on the computer at the dining room table. The daughter's on the same floor. My son is doing his homework in his room. My wife, Kate, is in her room. It's very quiet in Arlington. And suddenly we hear this explosion.
Yes.
It turns out we are about less than a mile away. So the house shook, they said. I didn't feel the house shook, probably because of my, center of gravity, as you know, is lower or something. I don't know. In any event, I did hear the noise. And I have to tell you, it's a disturbing noise. And it sounded like, not that I would know, obviously, what it sounds like for a plane to crash per se, but that's the first thing that came to my mind.
Right.
But I like to live in denial. So I didn't say anything, but I was quiet. And immediately, my son and my wife are upstairs. Did you hear that? What was that? The house shook. And then Kate has me go outside with a flashlight. We're looking. Did something fall on the house? But I said, it sounded distant. It sounded, further east. And sure enough, it was. And all of a sudden, fire engines start coming in, going in that direction, a lot of them. And then I decided as I can always do, I can text Captain Bill Dwyer, my brother-in-law, and said, hey, what's going on? But he's way out in Winchester. And he just said, haven't heard anything yet. 2 minutes later, okay, I'm on the road. And he just said, yeah. And he told me what happened. I don't think I can really share here all the details. But basically, I think we all know in the news now, it was a neighbor in a duplex who had been firing off a flare gun.
Yes.
And police were called to the scene. And apparently some gunfire was exchanged, and he had barricaded himself and sealed himself in his duplex, a brick duplex, again, really not far from where we live. I know exactly the neighborhood. And as the SWAT truck was there, they were the police were carefully approaching the house exploded. And you see a lot of video about this now. And I mean, that it literally exploded into just bits and pieces. There was one fatality, the man, who had been ranting apparently on social media about his neighbors, a bit of a recluse. The police suffered minor injuries. Miraculously, that was it.
We're lucky that nobody was hurt.
Right.
Who was responding.
Yeah. I mean, I always think about what happened in the movie Speed, when Keanu Reeves, partner Jeff, what's his name, goes in there with the team, and then there's always a gas situation, and then they realize that it's too late. The whole thing explodes. So luckily that was not the case, but man, oh man, that was a bit of excitement.
It was a big one. That was a big one.
It was a big one. It was a big one. And I got several people asking me, am I okay? And then making the prerequisite gas jokes. Thank you. Lethal. Mary Catherine, how are you? And have you recovered from the roll tide?
Ouch.
I'm
He
good. I'm
he
glad.
had to intro it
Yeah.
that way.
I
He
want to
couldn't.
keep ourselves distant over here, so
I
you can't
know.
reach out and grab me. Yes.
Well, as you can see behind me on the shelf, because we're zooming today, so we're remote. You can see behind me on the shelf the display for the
Oh.
2-time national championships back to back. University of Georgia Bulldogs. Look, all right, there's a lot going on. I got 2 sick kids, and then this happened. Here's I'm sad, obviously. I'm sad because the University of Georgia Bulldogs, for those that do not watch football, had won 29 games in a row until the SEC championship versus Alabama.
Yes.
Which is always a dangerous game for us. We've won 45 of the last 46 games before that, and the last loss was also to Alabama in an SEC championship.
This happened. This happened to the Redskins / Commanders, but the reverse.
Yeah, won 1 game of 46. Yeah. So it's been a long, good run. So I have to start with gratitude because not a lot of people get to watch their teams win 29 games in a row.
No, that's right.
Not a lot of people get to watch their teams do a back-to-back national championship. A three-peat was really a stretch dream, right?
You were in rarefied air.
Yes. Now, do I think that was certainly possible? Yes. I think this team is capable of it. Had a lot of injuries. That was unfortunate. That didn't help us.
Did you know what the spread was going into the game? Who was favored?
I didn't actually, because I've just been... I got too many kids to deal with that stuff.
Of course.
Also, I don't bet, so I never know the specifics that well. My mother doesn't bet, but she knows all the specifics. My parents listen to a lot of football podcasts, and so
they know the line.
They know all the things.
Okay, give me the number. I need to ask about the over/under.
No, you can. Yeah. My mother, if you need some inside info on the Bulldogs and SEC football in general, she can help you out.
She could be a bookmaker.
So look, obviously, I'm disappointed because the Georgia Bulldogs lost this game. And as a result of losing this game, despite having won 29 in a row, we slipped from number 1 in the polls, a position we had held virtually most of the regular season, during which we went undefeated. We fell to number 6.
Ouch.
Fell from 1 to 6.
And it's
on
also...
1 3-point loss.
And also, it's not like you're playing in a sort of a junior conference,
no,
or a mid-major, as we would call it.
No, an undefeated regular season in the SEC is impressive.
Yeah,
it's impressive. I would even argue it's among the top 4 performances in the nation.
At least top 4.
However, I will say, sometimes you got to get a W when you got to get a W. Like that is a lot of teams performed well this year. Okay.
Right.
Washington is undefeated. Do I believe Washington is as good as SEC teams with 1 loss? I don't, actually. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. FSU was undefeated. Do I think it's more likely that FSU can play against these teams? Sure.
Yeah.
Like, I think when you're undefeated in a Power 5 conference, I do think probably you just need to be in the playoff.
And FSU got elbowed out. Right?
Yeah, no, FSU and Georgia are playing in the Screwed Over Bowl. So that'll be fun.
That's a wonderful name.
Yeah, the Screwed Over Bowl. I don't know who's sponsoring that one. The sponsorships could get tricky.
Yeah.
But look, there's a lot of controversy over the 4-team playoffs. They're expanding it to 12 teams next year, so you won't run into this problem again. But I do think FSU people have reason to be angry. I think, and honest, I know that I am biased. But I do think if there is an SEC sort of power auto berth to the top 4, which there is, and frankly, there was one year when Alabama got that berth. I call it the Bama berth because that's what it's usually been. They got that position despite having not even won their division in the SEC. Yeah. Okay, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that should happen. However, if it's going to happen, the team that has been historically dominant from the SEC for the past 3 seasons is not Alabama. It is Georgia. But recency bias and a 3-point loss, we should have pulled it out. We didn't do it. This is the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, and we'll see how Washington holds up in these matchups. But I would also note Michigan. Everybody's like, oh, Michigan-Bama matchup, which look,
the big one.
I don't think Alabama's as good as it usually is, Michigan's quite good. I would also note that Michigan was supposed to be quite good when they lost 34-11 to Georgia 2 years ago in the playoffs. So
we'll
see what happens.
Do you find the new system to be unfair in that sense, though, single elimination versus the bowl championship series ranking?
No, because I think that everyone wants a real champion.
Right.
Everyone wants a real champion.
Yeah.
And
so if you lose by 3, that's on you. You should have been up by a touchdown or something.
And we could have our destiny was in our hands. The thing that I think is good about going to a 12-game playoff is that this one and this scenario exactly discourages at least the SEC from having a championship at all. Yeah. We have 2 giant divisions full of powerhouse teams. Probably the top of each of those divisions is number 1 in the country, but when you make them play is among the top 4 in the country. When you make them play each other in an extra game, guess what happens? Yeah. You eliminate one of the SEC's teams from the top 4.
Yeah. It's like one of these freak brackets where you have a 1 and a 2, but they're not in the final. They happen to be facing off somehow in a semi. So I'm glad you didn't think much about this, and that's not really eating at you. That's good.
Do I have thoughts, Vic?
No,
I have thoughts.
No. I thought you were like, you win some, you lose some. No.
Look, I'm trying.
I'm glad this didn't keep you up last night.
I'm trying to be rational about it. Okay.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of great games. We've had a lot of good performances. Do I think we are among the top 4 in the nation? Yes, I do.
Yeah. 7 is a bit much of a bit of a fall.
A 5-spot fall for a 3-point loss.
Yeah.
So Alabama's loss, by the way, was to Texas, and it was by 15 points or something at home. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Well, good. Moving on.
It's cool. It's cool. Other than that, we went out to get the Christmas tree last night.
So did Kate and my son.
All of the family.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
I was gonna say,
Are you happy with your tree?
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy with my tree. I don't know if we were having the podcast the year that I had a really bad tree. That was
I don't know. I don't recall, but I like to think that every tree, in the spirit of Charlie Brown, is a good tree. But that one was particularly
you're
bad.
wrong. You're wrong.
It was a
That's
particularly
not true.
bad one.
I had
Stop
one
shedding early.
So I'm going to tell this story briefly because it's very good. This is a
people are getting their trees. They should know.
Classic family.
Yes.
Christmas issue, right? We used to fight over the trees. My family fought over the trees because the boys in the family and my family of origin liked the long needle pines, and my mother and I wanted the firs because those are more elegant. And so we would fight over this, and we'd sort of trade off each year. I have always gotten myself a fir. And by gotten myself a fir, I mean, I tell the girls that they can, quote, choose a tree, but I'm sort of directing them, right?
Yes.
It's not open season out there because mama wants a pretty tree to sit in front of and drink her coffee. Okay.
Yes.
So one year, I think this might've been the first year that Steve and I picked out a tree together. We go together and he's heard that the girls choose the tree, but he doesn't assess that the same way that I do. And he sends them freelancing.
No.
And then when they pick a crazy, ugly Muppet tree, he insists that it's the better part of valor that I accept this tree.
A little humility in the Advent season.
And I was not happy about this. And I was so unhappy about this that the entire family has PTSD about picking out trees at this point. So now we take the whole family, but everyone is like, Mom, what do you think of this one? What?
Yeah. Knowing what you really want.
I don't know what I really want is part of the problem. I get a little indecisive. We went with something different this year. It's a white fir, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
And it's a little bit of middle of the road between the long pine and the Fraser. Anyway, I like it a lot. I do stress about it because I know everyone else is stressing on my behalf. And I do have I'm so tense about what if I get this home and I don't like it. I got it home this time. It is beautiful.
Oh.
And everyone sees that when Mom's happy, everyone's happy.
Do you like to just decorate it yourself alone? Nobody helps?
No.
I don't know how to do it.
So here's the thing. I like the kids to have as many trash, mismatched, terrible ornaments as they want on this tree.
And you put it on the back?
No, I don't even do that.
Wow.
But in order to have that, you should have a pretty silhouette So then it redeems the trash ornaments, you see.
The trash ornaments.
I like the
That would
tacky
mean
ornaments.
does that mean anything made in school?
I'm here for it. I'm here for the tacky ornaments. I think it's lovely. They have meaning.
Yeah,
I don't want
sure,
all
sure, sure.
uniform
My
ornaments.
my my issue is with ornaments that are ridiculously heavy. I don't,
Yeah, you got to be careful with
gotta
those.
put them on the branch, like,
Yeah.
the actual branch.
And then
Mhm.
this year we took the tree. This is a little bargain hunting tip for you guys. We don't get a gigantic tree. We have enough room to get a
Yeah,
gigantic tree,
yeah,
but
sure.
we don't
Okay.
get that partly because it fell one year and that gave me some
Yeah.
stress as well. So we don't do the gigantic tree. What we do is we get a cheaper tree that's beautiful, put it up on a coffee table, and you have 2 layers of presents and what looks like a giant tree. It's beautiful. And
It's quite the
in
illusion.
this
Yeah.
case,
Mhm.
we have put it on the coffee table with a kid's playpen around it because we have a toddler.
You have small kids again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is now blocked off. I don't know if she will view that as a challenge, like a hold my beer situation.
Well, you don't want anybody pulling.
Yeah, we're trying
Yeah,
to avoid that.
yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, we should
Okay,
talk about the
good.
news, I guess.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Well, it's a little depressing. So
Yeah.
we're going to talk about the rise of anti-Semitism
Oof.
in the United States of America, not just on campuses, but in communities. And just to segue from our opening, talking about holiday celebrations in Williamsburg, Virginia,
Mhm.
a menorah lighting, a
Yeah.
public menorah lighting, was canceled because organizers claimed it would send a message that the festival was, quote, supporting the killing/bombing of thousands of men, women, and children. The holiday Hanukkah is more than 2,000 years old. The only reason to conflate it with political objections
Mhm.
to a war fought by Israel, a just war fought by Israel, is because it's not really about political objections. It's
Yeah.
about not liking Jews.
Yeah. And it's also about cowardice
Yes.
and fear. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and one side being in this country, one side of the protest coin being huge bullies
Yeah.
who are
Yeah, yeah.
likely to disrupt
And being terrified of
even
offending them.
make dangerous your event.
That's right.
But that's in fact the reason you should not cancel it, because you should not be cowed by that threat. And if
Right.
you are, it creates more threats, which is what we're seeing in many major cities.
It encourages people, oh, if they're scared about having their menorah out, good, let's try to do it elsewhere in these other places. And yeah, the hate campaign.
By the way, Glenn Youngkin has blasted that arts festival for
Great.
making that decision, as he should. He says singling out the Jewish community by canceling this Hanukkah celebration is absurd and anti-Semitic. I mean, that's obviously the case. Obviously.
Yeah. It's sadly, it's about fear. I mean, there's fear, cowardice, as you were saying, and also what they think is politically what is fashionable. But for a lot of Jewish people out there now, I mean, it puts them on the spot on a lot of things, right? Because either you stand up and you proudly you wear your faith, you show your faith, but you risk retaliation or violence. And you walk down the street, if you're especially in cities like New York, for example, or you hide your faith. And we as Christians, we have not been put to this test in this country, Mary Catherine, but they have. The Jewish people are being put to this test right now.
Frequently.
Do you go out? Do you wear your kippah outside? Do you move the mezuzah in from outside your door? Do you light that menorah? And that's the society that we're living in right now in the United States because of this, fifth column of Jew haters. It's thoroughly depressing.
It's very depressing. By the way, the Jewish group that sponsors the menorah lighting part of this festival, which is a everyone festival, it's not just a Jewish observance, says we're not any political leaning at all. Like that's not the point of this thing. And they say we are deeply disappointed by Love Light is what it's called, Placemaking's decision To cancel the menorah lighting, United Jewish Community of the Virginia Peninsula said in a statement that Hanukkah celebration was a symbol of our cultural heritage and had no political agenda. That's wild. Even wilder and slightly scarier. And to your point, Vic, this is moving beyond the idea of Israel. It's moving beyond calls for ceasefire, which I always thought were
Mhm.
kind of nonsense on their face anyway,
Yeah.
because now the ceasefire is over because Hamas violated, because Hamas has promised to violate
Yeah.
it all the time, every
Yeah.
day until all the
Yeah.
Jews are gone.
Right.
So calling for a ceasefire now is sort
It's
of
in the
silly,
trash.
and is a mask for doing things like, for instance, going to a Philadelphia restaurant
Oh,
owned by a Jewish man,
yeah.
Israeli owned falafel restaurant, and yelling outside of it, Goldie, Goldie, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide.
Mhm.
There's an angry mob outside a Jewish owned business because it is a Jewish owned business.
Mhm.
And that is just crystal knocked.
It's so funny. I actually wrote it down, Kristallnacht. So they haven't gone so far as to smash the windows, but they've been certainly plastering it with their propaganda. I mean, you might as well spray paint, a Star of David on the
Yeah.
window. And the reason, there's two reasons. One, it's a Jewish establishment, but also, I guess the owner of the restaurant was donating proceeds to help the people of Israel, which
Hmm.
morphed into, oh, they're giving money to the IDF to kill women and children. So they are literally, the restaurant owner is killing women and children. And that is
Yeah.
not the case. They gave money to Friends of United Hatzalah, which is for medical aid.
Right. It's like an extremely
Yeah.
brave EMT operation
Yeah.
that get rapid
Right.
response, gets people to
Yeah.
places very fast. Do you know why Israel needs a rapid response, very, very skilled EMT team? Is because they're constantly being hit by
Yeah.
terrorist attacks
Yeah. Yeah.
on civilians.
These protests should disturb us. I don't know how much play it gets, overall through all the networks.
Yeah.
I only toggle between in my office between Fox and CNN, but and you see it a lot on Fox, obviously. But people should know about it. They should be concerned because this is taking a very dark turn.
But Goldie's is the name of the
Yeah,
restaurant. I should clarify. I'm not sure if I said that. There's also
yeah.
the absurdity of both this and the Oakland City Council meeting,
Oh,
which is like, in addition to
yeah,
the denialism and the insanity of it and the pro Hamas positions of everyone there, it's a city council meeting. Like, you don't
yeah.
actually have a say in international relations.
Yeah, but they felt compelled that they had to
Right.
say something as a city council, and that's going to make Israel really pause.
Right. And
You know,
and in this case, a Philadelphia falafel restaurant
yeah,
is charged with genocide.
yeah. Again, well,
That's how you
it's
know
yeah,
it ain't about the politics.
yeah. This
That's
is
what
not
I'm
about the Netanyahu government or the United government right now. It's about it's an opportunity to go after Jews. So I mean,
Yes.
this is what's happening.
I hope that at least that decision in Williamsburg might be turned back with some protest of some kind. We shall see. That
Yeah,
seems
and
like the
Youngkin
kind
can
of
send down the state troopers.
it just seems like the kind of thing where, like, the organizers might think better of that, but we'll see. I can't hold out too much hope.
Yeah,
There was also students from Columbia School of Social Work
yeah.
put up this on their Instagram. This is the social work for Columbia Students of Social Work for Palestine account, advertising us a very cool event that they were working
Ooh,
on. Significance of the October 7th Palestinian counteroffensive, teach-in and discussion at the Columbia School of Social Work in room such and such on December 6th. So it's just a counteroffensive. That's all it was, Vic.
yeah. This begs the question: what was the offensive?
Well,
Because I'm
just
pretty sure, again, yeah,
existing.
Israel left Gaza after their elections, 2005, 2006. So they're not occupying Gaza. In fact, they decided to allow work permits for Gazans to work in Israel. That turned out to backfire on Israel, as you know, since a lot of the terrorists and the killers, some are Hamas, some are not Hamas affiliated, took advantage of that in order to map out the area. So
Right.
I do like to know what the offensive was, if this is the counteroffensive, and by that sort of logic, and you hear this a lot, that Hamas did not start this war. They're just merely retaliating. So in their minds, on October 6th, when things were generally peaceful on October 6th, In their minds, Israel was at war. There was a war going out, and they were already
Yeah, I mean,
protesting it.
because
Because
I
I don't
think
think so.
because I think that the theory from them is
Yeah,
that by existing,
yeah,
by having the wherewithal to
yeah.
defend itself, Israel is de facto in violation of something, and
That's right,
that something is the oppressed versus
right,
oppressor
and the
paradigm.
occupation
Yeah.
of Israel. That's it.
So,
This brings up, of course, our friend. I don't know if you wanted to talk about
oh, I
Pramila.
do want to talk
Pramila.
about Pramila Jayapal, who is a representative. Honestly, the you got to give the squad credit for competing so closely amongst themselves to see who's the worst.
Who can be the worst? Right.
It's like remarkable
Let me
because
outdo you and say, I know Hitler's a bad guy, but that's gonna be the next one.
because who was it? Corey Bush was really
Yeah,
leading for a
sure.
while, and then Rashida Tlaib took the lead, and
Jamal
now
Bowman had a couple good moments,
it's
quote
true.
unquote good
And then
moments.
Pramila's like, no, 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 this cannot stand. I need
Yeah.
to make some really good comments. So this is an interview with Dana Bash on CNN this Sunday, where she's asked about the uncharacteristic quiet silence nearly from left-leaning feminist women's groups, including UN Women, by the way, who have been just horrendous on not
Yeah.
acknowledging the rapes used as a war tactic by Hamas, the real horrors that went on October 7th. They did tweet out, by the way, the other day, UN Women, that catcalling is violence. So we got that covered, but they didn't, not covering this. Anyway, so Jayapal is asked about this issue.
I want to ask you about sexual violence. And it's kind of remarkable that this issue hasn't gotten enough attention globally. Widespread use of rape, brutal rape, sexual violence against Israeli women by Hamas. I've seen a lot of progressive women, generally speaking, they're quick to defend women's rights and speak out against using rape as a weapon of war, but downright silent on what we saw on October 7th and what might be happening inside Gaza right now to these hostages. Why is that?
I mean, I don't know that that's true. I think we always talk about the impact of war on women in particular. In fact, I remember 20 years ago I did a petition around the war in Iraq.
Have you talked about it since
oh,
October
absolutely.
7th?
And I've condemned what Hamas has done. I've condemned
Specifically
all
against
of
women?
the actions. Absolutely. The rape, of course. But I think we have to remember that Israel is a democracy. That is why they are a strong ally of ours. And if they do not comply with international humanitarian law, they are bringing themselves to a place that makes it much more difficult strategically for them to be able to build the kinds of allies, to keep public opinion with them. And frankly, morally, I think we cannot say that one war crime deserves another. That is not what international humanitarian law says.
Okay, with respect, I was just asking about the women, and you turned it back to Israel. I'm asking you about Hamas. In fact,
I already answered your question, Dana. I said it's horrific, and I think that rape is horrific, sexual assault is horrific. I think that it happens in war situations. Terrorist organizations like Hamas obviously are using these as tools. However, I think we have to be balanced about bringing in the outrages against Palestinians. 15,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes, three-quarters of whom are women and children.
and it's horrible, but you don't see Israeli soldiers raping.
For
For Dana Bash.
Thank you, Dana Bash. Yes, for pressing her on this. So just to clarify, that was rape is bad, and rape is bad, however.
Yeah, she was almost there.
Yeah.
And I consider it progress that she referred to Hamas as a terrorist organization.
It's just like the bar is so low, we're tripping over
It
it
is,
at this
but
point.
it pained her to have to do the condemnation, and then she couldn't leave it at that because then she had to use the equivalents and say, don't forget what Israel's doing, ... in response to October 7th. But the fact is, let's not forget that both sides, and you almost think that what she was, holding back is the urge to say, well, Israel has been raping,
Oh,
an
no, no.
entire nation since 1948.
That's what she wanted to
Oh,
say for sure. It may surprise you to find out, Vic, that she had a bit of a different standard when it came to the accusations of one Dr. Christine Blasey Ford
oh yes.
against Brett Kavanaugh,
Yeah.
for which there was like the idea that maybe over a certain period of several years at unknown place, unknown party, unknown location, unclear, that a bad thing happened, but that Brett Kavanaugh was definitely guilty of the bad thing.
Yes. And thank God Dr. Ford's best friend has, oh, wait, she didn't remember.
Nope.
She was the witness
Nope.
that she did not remember.
In fact, she said that people pressured her to affirm that she remembered
Yeah.
when that would have been a lie. So this is what she had to say about Blasey Ford. Dr. Blasey Ford has shown herself to be brave, compelling, and absolutely credible today. We owe it to her and to sexual assault survivors everywhere to not confirm Kavanaugh. We should add an asterisk and on everywhere, and just that's Israel. Israel does not count in that formulation.
Yeah, that's right. I also, and Jayapal did not say this, but there are a lot of people out there on the anti-Israel side who, when these stories come out, they dismiss them as like, oh, they're making it up.
Oh, they need so much evidence from Israel.
Oh, so much.
But none when it comes to Kavanaugh. So
and nothing will actually satisfy them about that. And along those same lines, by the way, as if Israel doesn't have enough to deal with and to worry about with the women and the children in the war, you have also the Biden administration. And we talked about this last episode and the last couple episodes, where Biden and Blinken are beginning to waver a little bit on the war against Hamas.
Right.
And what they would really like is to make the aid conditional to some of their demands and to tell Israel how to prosecute this war. But one of the things they keep talking about are the safe zones. And, can you just kill the terrorists? And I heard this when Blinken made the statement, and all I can think about, by the way, and Biden for that matter, the administration's position, all I can think about is in the movie Guardians of the Galaxy, and Yondu has this magical arrow and it flies around just killing the bad guys. And that's what they were hoping Israel
That's all they need. That's all they need.
Go after the terrorists that way.
Yes. By the way, I was reading just today in the Wall Street Journal that there's some talk of starting to flood these terror tunnels that Hamas has built under Gaza. Of course, the international community will object to that, just as they object to everything that the IDF does.
You might drown a terrorist.
You might. So I do want to note, just as these numbers might not be completely in date, but they're pretty close to it, that right now there are 137 people still held hostage by Hamas, 117 men, 20 women. There are 126 Israelis, 11 foreigners, 8 from Thailand, 1 from Nepal, 1 from Tanzania, 1 from France. And I believe there are still 2 children under 18 because the Bibas family, we have heard that they likely died or were killed, but that has not been completely confirmed. Yeah. Of course, people hold out hope. There are 10 aged 75 and above. And I believe seven people are still classified as missing. This is from a reliable reporter inside Israel, just to give you an idea of the scale of the humanitarian issue for the hostages. Still, even though we had some good news of people coming out, those folks are still there. And the theory is that many of them have not been released because they were abused to such a degree that them being released will reveal the extent to which they were.
And in some ways, yes, in terms of if they're concerned with some aspect of, public opinion, but there are a lot of people who are going to defend them no matter what. I mean, it's like, might as well release them. But of course, this is.
I know Hamas should be like, oh, I guess we don't have to worry. They're still marching for us.
There will always be people who have their back. But it is realistically a terrifying possibility that, people who they have maltreated and they do not want, once they are in the safe confines of Israel and they will feel comfortable about talking about perhaps awful, terrible things, whether it be these women or children, that they may never let them go because they don't want them. They don't want the world to know the extent of their brutality.
Don't worry. college
brutality.
campuses got your back, guys.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
matter
they
what.
do. Yeah, it's part of the counteroffensive, and that's the other thing. They're allowed to engage in this kind of behavior because it's still all a form of resistance, and there are no such thing as civilian settlers and colonize. They're all colonizers, whether it be men, women, children, babies, and so
Right.
all bets are off. And so when they do these things, they excuse them because it's about survival, it's about resistance, and they are allowed to fire rockets directly into civilian population centers, and that's fine. No, but Israel, on the other hand, has to abide by these very strict rules.
Yes, it is. It is a release from your obligation to right and wrong, or to any sort of legal strictures, to just say, I am oppressed, and therefore.
Therefore,
It doesn't turn out that great. So, moving to a little 2024 news, the race to the bottom. Here we go. So, there's two debates
yes,
on the docket in 1 week. One was last week's DeSantis versus Newsom showdown, hosted by Hannity in Georgia on Fox. And I'm going to get to that in a second, but I would like, just as a programming note, when this comes out, tonight is the next GOP debate, I think featuring four
you
candidates.
will have Chris Christie and Vivek Ramaswamy, and then of course the front runners Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley.
Yes, and that is aired on News Nation. It is taking place in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and it is in partnership with the Washington Free Beacon. And our friend Eliana Johnson will be asking questions at that debate alongside Megyn Kelly and Elizabeth Vargas from
It's going to be great.
News Nation. So tune into that, and we will be talking about that as well. Let's go to the Newsom DeSantis showdown. Did you watch this?
I turned it on. I was a little late, and I thought I was on the wrong channel and watching the Lincoln Douglas debate. It's like, what? Okay, Lincoln Douglas, it was not. There was a lot of interrupting.
Yes.
Not really my idea of a fun time. Obviously, I agree with one side and not the other. So, I'm not gaining anything except for to see how Florida Governor Ron DeSantis handles himself in this setting, not facing off with fellow Republicans in a primary debate, but against a Democratic opponent, shall we say. And seeing how Governor Gavin Newsom of California does in an unfriendly environment, since I think he normally likes to surround himself with friendly media. I give him credit for agreeing to be on Fox. I did not stick around. I wasn't sure if Hannity was conducting a poll because it's not going to be a shocker there what people think, but I did want to see how Newsom would handle the laying out of facts. And the bottom line is he just denies, and then continues throwing out like lies about a number of things, particularly about book banning. And he'll just say, "Oh yeah, all these books are banned," and they're not. And he just keeps on going. So that's a little bit of a teaser for what might come in our future, in America's future. What about you, Mary Catherine? Did you see it, or part of it, or clips, or what?
So I watched it and I enjoyed it. Now,
okay.
Now
all right.
I think this is because I enjoyed it because, look, there are two frontrunners, presumptive nominees, who do not wish to get in the arena and have a discussion.
Yep.
Trump is not interested. Biden's not interested. We probably won't have them in a debate situation. Mm-hmm. Now, do I think debates behoove the body politic in general at this point? I'm not sure. But to my mind, I like to hear people discuss policy. I like worldviews to face off against each other. I think it's owed to voters for them to do that, even when often it can be like a bit of a circus, right?
Yep.
I enjoyed this one because it's two people who have wildly different worldviews, who can put sentences together, and they are articulating those worldviews. I appreciate Newsom being there to do it. I understand why he's there. It raises his profile. He's obviously not running for president at this point. Raises his profile. In waiting. Yeah. Right. But for that reason, look, if DeSantis went on a stage against Biden would be absolutely crushed. I mean, he could not put sentences together to face off against DeSantis. So this is a more of an even matchup. Mm-hmm. I think that the cards were stacked against Newsom going in because reality is stacked against Newsom.
That's right. You just lay out you just lay out plain facts. Yes. One state decided to open early, even before Trump thought the state should open, meaning Florida. and opened the beaches, even though you had a Grim Reaper out there saying it's Death Santis is going to kill us all. And then you had the other state, as other people have mentioned, that was, filling skate parks with sand.
Right.
And if you look at Florida, since COVID, has been a net migration state. And from California alone, in the last 2 years, or since from 2020 to 2022, something like 120,000 Californians have left for Florida. Many more have left for other states, Texas, Arizona, you name it. But 120,000 have left California to Florida. Why is that? And what is, why are they leaving your state? That's the question.
Right. Well, and I think probably the most notable viral moment of the debate was when Ron DeSantis explained that he had met a fella in Florida.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll just play that clip so you find out who that fellow was who had come from California.
Here's what I would say. I talked to a lot of the people that have moved from California to Florida, and we never used to get people from California to Florida or really anywhere in these, because why would you leave California? It's got the best weather, great natural forces. Excuse me, sir. But one of the things that I did, I was talking to a gentleman, a couple.
Guys, I'm going to let the debate breathe. But it's his turn. Let's take turns.
So I was talking to a fella who had made the move from California to Florida, and he was telling me that Florida is much better governed, safer, better budget, lower taxes, all this stuff. And he's really happy with the quality of life. And then he paused and he said, by the way, I'm Gavin Newsom's father-in-law. So we do count Gavin's in-laws as some of the people that have fled California and come to the state of Florida. And why are we getting people to come? We have a 50-year low in the crime rate. You don't see, in the last 10 years, we've had a 45% decline in homelessness. California's had a 45% increase in homelessness. We back the blue. I was walking the streets of San Francisco a couple months ago, and I had some of the cops in San Francisco do a beeline to come over to me, and I didn't know what they were going to say. And they're like, we want to thank you for standing for law enforcement, because we don't get that support in the state of California. So people understand quality of life matters. They understand that Florida's doing it right, and I can tell you the numbers speak for themselves. We have way more people moving to this state than leaving. Gavin can't say the opposite. More people are leaving California than are moving into California.
I thought to myself, if I were Governor Gavin Newsom and did not expect that question, but if it happened and they throw that at you and it was your father-in-law, I would have immediately said, well, I don't really miss him.
Just go for the in-law joke.
Yeah, might as well make the in-law joke. I mean, the fact
honestly,
is...
you're not going to do any better than that. It's a really tough one to answer.
Yeah, they left your state. Well, I didn't agree with my father-in-law on a lot of things, whatever.
The other thing about DeSantis, and this is one of the things I like about him as a candidate, and one of the reasons Trump in particular, doesn't want to debate him, he is highly prepared.
Oh, he had to be. He had to be highly from day one, from the get-go, when he decided on his COVID policy, moving on to, other social and cultural policy issues, in his state, and particularly issues with the school. It's unfair for all of us to expect we can just rattle off these statistics, but you expect it of our leaders, and he was fully armed.
Yeah, and so he was ready with the facts. He's quick with them when challenged by Newsom. Newsom was reduced frequently to, how dare you, sir? Which isn't really an argument. And I noted that Newsom's attack on DeSantis on COVID made no sense at all. And he doesn't want it to, because if you make it make sense, then he's on the losing end. But he said DeSantis didn't do enough to close his state. But then he also said he aligned with Fauci too much and did too much and promoted vaccines. And in that way, he's just making the Trump camp argument against DeSantis very transparently, and I don't think very effectively.
You can't have it both ways. So.
He also, Newsom went after DeSantis on education because, like Randy Weingarten, he has no shame.
Yeah.
Even though, according to the tracker put together by Burbio.com, California was 50th for reopening schools and Florida was third.
Yeah.
Third. So a lot of kids were in schools in Florida, while Randy Weingarten and her state affiliate were suing DeSantis to keep them closed. So don't listen to them when they say that they were trying to get them open.
They're just hoping you forget.
And then one last one that I thought was pretty smart was when Newsom went after him about Disney.
Yeah.
And he said, basically said, like, I mean, I let Disney open, so you had Disney closed for a year, so it's probably not great for their bottom line. I don't know who was more vindictive, you or me.
At the end of the day, that's a pretty good comeback, knowing that he was going to bring it up anyway with Disney. I get a kick that he had in his pocket a copy of Genderqueer.
Yeah, no,
ready to. He whipped it out.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it for this reason. And I think, I'm not saying just I love it for DeSantis. I think everyone should use this tactic, because what they do is they say that these attempts to, quote, ban books.
Right.
Now, there are some that I disagree with.
Sure.
But attempts to put books in age-appropriate categories is a totally protected thing to do as a parent, as a citizen. It does not violate the First Amendment. You're not banning books.
We're moving it from one section of the library to another, as they say.
Genderqueer is very clearly
right.
crosses over into very inappropriate for most age groups of minors. And so much so that if you read it in public at a meeting, they will cut your mic. So
that's right, because like those school board meetings where this has been done, and it's like, please, this is disgusting. I don't want to hear anything. Please just keep it to my children. I just want the children to look at these pictures and read about it, not me. This is inappropriate for adults. So it just doesn't make sense, because they lived, because 10 years ago or 15 years ago, everybody would have been on the same page on this, saying that, well, that's crazy, and now suddenly they have to pretend that they've always been woke.
So I think that's helpful. He had a censored version, a pixelated version of a page of this book to show. And the other thing he had on hand was the poop map for San Francisco.
Oh, right. He's got everything. He's got everything in his pockets.
Again, useful because they like to sort of elide the idea that San Francisco, which Newsom used to run, has really declined to an alarming degree, making people who live there unsafe, making the whole situation just kind of off the rails. And a good illustration of that is the fact that you need an app to chart the public defecation.
Right, because you allow this to happen because you believe that it's not something that should be, chargeable as any sort of offense or misdemeanors, that you're just allowed to do this. It's your right to, and it's a breakdown. You're allowing a breakdown of society. Don't kid yourself. And it's gross. And the thing is, all these people who champion this, like Newsom, they don't have to worry about it.
Of course not. They're at French Laundry.
Yeah, they're at French Laundry. They live in wonderful gated communities where things are still clean, and in some cases they have their own security detail.
I'm gonna do one more point on this debate, but before I do that, you just reminded me of a clip from Mayor Muriel Bowser that I'd like to play for you. It's on this subject, and it's really just the most powerful now it can be told. Are you ready for this one? You're gonna love this.
All right, I want to hear it.
Spent 3 years disrupting our ecosystem. I mean, and it's really out of whack. And I've been saying it not just now, but for the last 3 years, that we can't stop holding criminals accountable. We can't stop police from policing. We can't defund the police. We can't keep our court system shut down. We can't stop supervising kids. We can't divert them when they've committed a crime. We can't let children in the schools beat up teachers with no consequences. We got to get our ecosystem back in track. We just do. So
that's the mayor of DC, Vic.
Yeah, it only took her 3 terms.
Yeah,
to finally have this the come to Jesus moment.
Like how did the ecosystem get out of whack? That's so strange.
I don't know, but it's when you go into the city. Like I get an Uber. Did I mention this on the last episode? They don't unlock the door until you are right there, still trying to open it, and it's still locked. And as soon as I got it, boom, locked again. Yep. They're scared because, and I remember an Uber driver telling me that, a guy he knew was dropping somebody off at the Ritz-Carlton, the one in the west end of town. And right there in front of the hotel got carjacked, his whatever Escalade or whatever it was. Yeah. It's ridiculous. And as we know, we talk about, carjackings happening everywhere in fancy neighborhoods and, near, with Secret Service happen to be involved. A Washington Commanders football player getting shot in broad daylight while his car is trying to get, carjacked. It's you name it.
Mistakes were made, Vic. One more point about this DeSantis-Newsom matchup is that I think you can often tell, look, there's no standard for exactly how you grade a debate. And Newsom is a skillful speaker, even if I think often he's full of it. So there are plenty
He's
of
very
people.
slick.
There are plenty of people who could argue because he's slick and he presents fairly well that maybe he won. I think it's a very hard argument to make. Here's an argument.
If you watched it without the sound, maybe.
Here's an argument, which is that when the camp that says that the other camp broke the rules afterwards is probably the one that lost.
Yeah.
So Newsom's team is arguing about various
the props.
They're saying the props violated the
Usually
rules.
There's a prop rule, yeah.
Like if you won, you're not talking about that. They also threatened, I'm going to use the word threatened, to extend the debate. By the way, I thought Hannity did a nice job.
Yeah, fine.
The topics were relevant.
And again, kudos for him to convince Newsom to do this. Obviously.
Yes. And
they're both self-interested, but still.
Of course, yeah. But I thought he did a nice job. The topics were relevant. He wasn't like hectoring people. He wasn't the story.
Yeah.
Which is what you want. And then at the end, perhaps to Hannity's credit, both of those candidates said, "Oh, we'll keep going. Why don't you extend?" And Hannity was game for it. They went to commercial. They come back, and the behind-the-scenes story is that Newsom's wife was like, "Nah, man, you're not doing this."
We're done.
Like, look, they're both very busy. I'm sure they had other places to be because they're,
Well, I mean, it also throws you for a loop because you have to worry about the advertisers and, there's a set schedule and, I got to get my commercial for Balance of Nature, man. I need to know who else. I need to know who else is using it because every time I see these, these testimonials, I think to myself, that's going to be me in 10 years, 5 years, next year. Oh, it's me now. It's me
now. Okay, so that's like a bit of 2024, even though Newsom's not there. I did think an attack line that's good to use for Newsom in the future is like, because he's going to come after you on your trailing in your primary.
Yeah, sure.
And you can be like, well, you're running a shadow campaign, so you have 0% in the polls right now. Like, maybe you should actually run a campaign against the incumbent who's terrible, and give that a try, sir.
Unless you're just doing this for fun.
That's what I'd say. A little tiny bit more 2024 news. Ron DeSantis earned an endorsement from an Iowa State Representative Barb Nith McCullough the other day. He's got 42 state legislators in Iowa now. And then in the Nikki Haley column, of course, I mentioned the Americans for Prosperity Action endorsement of her. That comes with, I should note, and this is what's very important about this, they have 10 paid staffers in Iowa and a network of door knockers. So that will obviously matter for her because they can use those resources.
And she's getting attacked. I see these ads now going after Nikki Haley from the right.
Yeah.
So,
it's on, guys.
That's how they know she's a possible threat.
The countdown is here.
Yeah.
Anyway, I enjoyed that debate. Call me the weirdo. I think I'm the weirdo, but
that's fine. You are a political animal, Mary Catherine.
I am. You know what's funny is that every time I turn on a debate, I think, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this. I just want to hang out and read a book or something.
Yeah.
And then
you leave it on.
And then I start watching it and I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
Even when it's not great, I enjoy
my
it.
favorite, the only favorite moment I have in recent memory was during a Democratic primary debate where the former Virginia Senator Jim Webb was running for president. And do you remember this? They asked him a question and he said, I forget what the question was, but he said that he remembers when he was in Vietnam confronting, basically, I think he was tempted to say Charlie, but it was, and that guy regretted meeting me. That guy regretted meeting me, yes, because I left him in a ditch face down, and I was like, this man is amazing.
I'm not mad at that one.
Yeah. Yeah, look that up on YouTube. It's a good one.
Up next, we do have a more Now It Can Be Told. There's a child mask mandate study, a systematic review. This comes from several doctors who are interested in, actually having evidence about whether masks for children are effective. And they screened 597 studies and included 22 in the final analysis. They were trying to get, the best and least biased observational studies because, as you know, there were no random controlled trials, even though there should have been, because if people feel strongly about that intervention, they should have tried to prove that it was important. They did not. What they found was that real-world effectiveness of child mask mandates against SARS-CoV-2 transmission or infection has not been demonstrated with high-quality evidence. The current body of scientific data does not support masking children for protection against COVID-19. Now, we all basically knew this, but it's helpful to have people do the legwork. This is in BMJ Medical Journal, and it's been it's been reviewed and all that stuff. But they will still tell you that it was totally fine
Well, yeah,
to
not
rob
only
children of
that's
all
right.
sorts of developmental milestones
Yeah,
for
no,
years.
because they don't want to look bad, and they're going to defend their position and say that, well, look, this is what how about a little grace and humility? I mean, look, we were trying to do the best that we could at that time, even though in Europe they already were realizing that, they didn't need to do a number of these COVID policies, including the vaccines for children, by the way. But I think what is interesting is if they have, all you need is Fauci on TV, because what he would say to counter that study that you just mentioned, Mary Catherine, is that's all well and good, but on the individual basis, we don't know that it doesn't benefit, and it could greatly benefit on an individual basis. Do you remember he said this? That was his argument, wasn't it?
And the argument then becomes like the data can't be the problem.
Yeah.
And the intervention can't be the problem. Only you can be the problem.
Yeah,
you
that's
have
right.
not been wearing it properly. And by the way,
you need your fitted mask.
By the way, when they extend that argument to 3-year-olds, it means you must rely on 3-year-olds to wear a very specific mask.
Yeah.
Very specifically for long periods of time, which is a ludicrous standard for public health.
It's like, do you remember what I'd love to do? I'd love a follow-up on that Los Angeles-based journalist who was talking about her daughter who loved wearing a mask even when she's doing track or cross country. And then she comes home, and then even sitting on the couch, she forgets she just has it on until she goes to bed, and she wakes up and puts the mask. Do you think that she's still wearing the mask, or do they finally get rid of the mask? Do you remember seeing adults maskless because of the vaccine, but the 3-year-olds had to wear the mask?
That was my least favorite combo. Is like out shopping at Macy's with my kid who's masked, but I'm not.
That was an amazing moment, in a terrible way.
Okay. One last thing, Vic, before we go.
Yes.
I'm gonna do you want to do a little civics quiz?
Oh, okay.
Governor Kathy Hochul, upon the announcement of the expulsion of Representative George Santos, which I now realize we haven't even gotten to, but there's just a lot going on, guys.
Yeah, I'll put in my 2 cents, but go ahead.
So Santos is out. I'm actually a little bit like, look, he was elected by the people, and expulsion should have a very high bar. John Fetterman went on The View and said that, hey, if we're expelling him, why are we not expelling Menendez, who's in the Senate and stands accused of much more serious crimes?
The senator from Egypt, he calls him.
The View then, of course, goes, but hey, he hasn't had his due process. That doesn't matter for a Republican. It only matters for Menendez because they want that vote. But anyway, he's out. So the governor of New York says, she tweets, I am prepared to undertake the solemn responsibility of filling the vacancy in New York's 3rd district. The people of Long Island deserve nothing less. Can you spot what's wrong with that one, Vic?
Yes. It's not an appointment. You have to have a special election for the House.
Yep.
So different from the Senate.
Yes, the Senate is often an appointment, sometimes a special election.
That is, it's like in New Jersey, by the way, that's like the only reason why there was a brief moment in the 1980s that there was a Republican senator, because it was after, I think, Harrison Williams was forced out. So they filled him in with, I think it was Nick Brady. I can be forgetting this. And in this case, in the House, you need a special election. But however, Mary Catherine, I'm going to parse that tweet and say maybe she meant that she would fill the position with herself.
Oh, she's going to run.
Yeah, she's going to run.
She's going to run. Yeah. I'm going to say she doesn't understand anything about civics.
Can she blame this on a flunky?
I mean, just Google it, guys. Like, just Google what happens.
I don't handle my own Twitter. Somebody else. Maybe she could say that. I don't know.
I mean, the answer is she won't have to say anything because she's a Democrat. Nobody's going to bother her.
No, nobody cares. They're not going to. Are they going to have a field day with this on the late night talk shows? Probably not. No. I'm going to say I agree with you on George Santos. I think he deserved to be tried, and he already announced he's not running for re-election anyway. Right. But they wanted him out right now before he'd even been convicted. And this is not to dismiss the allegations, by the way, which are very serious, spending campaign funds, particularly with OnlyFans. And
well, you need more information about that. So
I've been looking into that because they are just allegations. And Sephora. which is
Sephora.
interesting. Yes. So, I mean, the report from the House Ethics Committee, it's damning for sure. But as you said, I don't think it sets a good precedent. Apparently, what did he say when he left? He said, "To hell with this place." That's what he said.
I don't think he planned to win. I think that was the mistake he made.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that line, though, because it reminded me of Schwarzenegger. It's a very Schwarzenegger line, which is, "To hell with you," you know? So, anyway, since we mentioned it on our last show, on Sirius XM, there are now 2 new channels, Mary Catherine, one
Oh.
dedicated to Mannheim Steamroller and the other channel dedicated to Trans-Siberian
Look.
I was going to say Trans-Siberian Railway, Trans-Siberian Orchestra. My question to you is, if you interchange the songs, would anybody notice?
Honestly, like, I got to do some experimentation on this because I'm not sure. Like, am I getting it mixed up and that's a faux pas, or am I getting it mixed up because it's understandable to get them mixed up?
I didn't know there were that many keyboards around to have both bands in play.
You can't have them in one city at
That's
one time.
a lot of synth.
It's like the respirators at the beginning of COVID. There's just not enough.
It's just not enough. No, synth heavy. Okay, that wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Victorino Mattis.
I'm at MKHammer on Twitter, at MKHammerTime on Instagram. You can follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on Instagram or YouTube. You can watch us there most of the time. And you should tune in to the debate. If you're listening this morning, it's tonight.
Definitely.
And I will be at the Washington Post live tweeting a little bit about, or live blogging a bit about it. Is that a term we still use? Anyway, I'm from the 80s. Okay. Thanks for getting hammered responsibly. Thanks for being here. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.